and welcome to our first episode of the Jeel Msh Daye3 podcast. Jeel Msh Daye3 is a platform showcasing young leaders taking action and generating impact in the Middle East and North Africa, in the region itself and in the diaspora. Often labeled as Jeel Daye3, or the lost generation, what we are is a generation that is growing out of the colonial legacies, broken systems, and constant state of crisis. Yet, we're still creating, organizing, innovating, and imagining new futures where ideas flourish. In this podcast, we discuss topics for young people by young people, ranging from entrepreneurship, NGOs, sustainability, research, politics, activism, and more, showing إنه هذا الجيل مش ضايع. Today we're really happy to have Rebecca with us. Rebecca is an advocate, humanitarian, and content creator. She's originally from Palestine but grew up in the United States and has now returned to the Middle East to serve the region and bring about the change she wanted to see in times of injustice. She embodies the importance of the diaspora for driving impact in the region and outside. So, Rebecca, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Hi, my name is Rebecca. I am mostly Palestinian, but actually a giant Shami mix. My dad is Lebanese and Syrian and some other stuff, and my mom is Palestinian, but I grew up closer to the Palestinian side of the family. And I grew up in the US, always interested in kind of mutual aid projects. I worked in a few mutual aid projects in New York where I grew up, such as community fridge filling. I'm not quite sure if anyone is familiar with the concept of community fridges, but they're refrigerators that some stores would have outside of their store. And then if you have extra food, you would put it in the fridge. And then if you need food, you would take it out. So I was involved in small projects such as this my whole life. But it wasn't until the past few years that I went headfirst into the humanitarian space.
Amazing. So you always had it in you, and you kind of at the time you did what you could do at your local level, and then saw injustice abroad, and you were I still want to take part in that. More on that later, I guess. But firstly, I think just for everyone's sake, I think because it's also important to the theme here, what does denizens mean?
Okay, so a denizen is similar to a citizen, but quite the opposite. So a citizen is someone who lives in a certain area and belongs, and a denizen is someone who lives somewhere but doesn't quite belong. It's maybe not as negatively connotated as the word refugee, especially since the word refugee is now a controlled word. So if you're a refugee somewhere, you have legal documentation saying that you're officially a refugee, and that gives you access to certain refugee services, whereas many people who find themselves as technically refugees are not officially refugees, and that is a lot of the issues behind this lack of services they have access to. A denizen also kind of encompasses the idea of the diaspora, and I wanted to pick a word that encompasses both recently displaced people and people who've been displaced for a couple of generations now into one common word, and I chose the word denizen for that.
Amazing. I had never heard of this word, which is strange because it encompasses so many things we talk about on a daily basis. So is that just people who would flee war, or would it be, for example, also economic migrants, let's say?
I think it encompasses anyone who finds themselves in a place where they don't quite belong. So okay. It's a pretty broad term.
That's
so you
nice.
can, or someone who frequents a place often but doesn't belong there, So I think it's quite useful because it's broad enough to encompass a lot of us and the experiences that we've been through, but it's also unifying enough so that as an organization, we can call ourselves denizens. We can call us as a group denizens. I'm working on a volunteer system where there's different I don't want to say levels of denizens, but people with different responsibilities that kind of volunteer in the group. So I think while it's broad enough to encompass a lot of different stories, it's specific enough to bring us all back together again.
It's amazing. And I guess on that line, talking about denizens, how would you describe your mission in one sentence?
So I think a lot of us right now are really overwhelmed with how awful the world is. Not that this is anything new, but access to a lot more information than maybe our grandparents and older had access to makes us realize how terrible things are in the world. And the goal is generally to try to fight the injustices that we see, and the injustices that hit quite close to home for many of us in, for example, the Shami region, or even like other Arab countries, North Africa. And so in one sentence, I guess our goal would be to try to right the injustices that we see on a day-to-day basis that we expect our government and our leaders to do, and they're not.
I think it would be great also to talk about you as a founder and how did that motivation and that passion come about, and what was the process for it to be embodied in Denizens today? So how would you say your past experiences led you to founding Denizens?
I think over the years, I've grown in confidence with what I can accomplish, especially with like a solid group of people. And I realized actually quite early on in my life that the difference between the people that like are doing things and the people that are not is just simply doing it, you know? And over time, I just realized that the more things I did, the more confident I got to do it. And so when I saw a need, I started filling it automatically. The goal wasn't initially to found an organization. It was just to help people. And then I realized that one of the tools that I might need in this quest to help people is a organization. So, for example, I needed a separate bank account from my own. I needed people that I can rely on. I needed checks and balances so that there's a lot of accountability in place. And the best way for me to accomplish this is to found the organization. So the goal wasn't the organization itself. The organization was a tool in my general mission.
I think also the community first story is quite interesting because it shows that want to do something to make an impact was always there. And as you said, now that Denizens is a tool for you to continue doing that at perhaps a larger scale. And personally, I really like when you hear about the background stories of how things come about. For instance, for example, I'd love to know how was your couple months before founding Denizens, or just the chapter of your life preceding the founding of Denizens, and what characterized it? How did you feel? And how did you change that feeling into action, basically?
Okay, the few months before the founding of Denizens was probably the weirdest, most stressful few months of my life. It all started when my birthday's on October 5th. So for my birthday, I wanted to take myself on a solo trip to London. And I had a cool opportunity because at the time I was a full-time content creator and I had management. And my manager had a apartment in London that was going to be empty for my birthday week. And she was going to let me stay there for free, which London accommodation is very expensive, and the opportunity to stay there for free in central London, mind you, like a really beautiful area to stay, was just fantastic. So October 5th, I flew to London to have a little solo trip for my birthday. And then October 7th, I get a text from my friends, and my friends are like, "Is your family okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, what are you talking about?" And they're like, "The bombs." And I was like, "What bombs?" And that's when everything started unfolding. I called my mom checked on my family. Everyone was fine, thankfully. But I remember exactly where I was when I got that text. And I spent the next week, instead of frolicking in London, I spent it literally crying in my manager's apartment by myself. I tried to book a flight home, but for some reason the flights had gotten super expensive last minute, so I couldn't go home. And I was just, I don't want to make it about myself, but I was like miserable, right? I was just I don't know if any of you guys remember truly how traumatizing it was to like initially see all the images. Like we had grown up, I mean, especially living in Palestine or being Palestinian or Lebanese, like we've seen destruction. We've seen all of this before. This is not the first time. However, this was the first time that TikTok basically live streamed it. We'd only ever seen super filtered, blurry things through the mainstream news. We hadn't seen people like POV genocide before.
Yeah.
It made it so much more real. Also, this is my first time seeing this as a full-grown adult, you know? So it made it feel so much more real. I was in a state of shock. I was seeing people who looked just like me, like bloody and going through insane things. So I spent this week, my birthday week, I started crying alone in my manager's apartment. Then I went home and I was crying every night after that. And I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what to do. So at the time I was in the TikTok creator program. So I decided to start with something small. I was posting my grandma's recipes, and I said that for any money I make on these videos, I'll donate them to people in need. So those videos went viral. They got several million views each. And in a few weeks, I raised about like $4,000. And I had like people writing articles about it. and it was really crazy. But then when it came to donate the money, I didn't know who to donate to. I didn't know who to trust. I had a general distrust of like large organizations, but I didn't know any smaller, impactful organizations personally that could do the work.
Yeah.
So I asked my followers on Instagram, I was like, hey, does anyone know smaller organizations I could donate this money to that could make use of it? And someone reached out to me and was like, well, hey, my friend actually works with some displaced Gazans in Cairo. They had gone to Cairo for like a medical service, and then when the border closed, they got stuck there. Now, this is in, I think, early November or so. And they're like, yeah, they're not an organization, but they're a person really doing the work, and you can even go there and do the work yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, sure. I was connected to this person. I went to Egypt. I saw the situation here, realized it was much more than my $4,000 could stretch, right? And at this time, the border was open. So people were also fundraising to try to evacuate people. So I was like, maybe I can try to evacuate some people. I can raise money and try to evacuate some people. One of my friends, Fatin, and I started doing TikToks to try to raise money. And we raised so much money, I got scared and closed the GoFundMe. We raised, I can't remember now, but I think it was $130,000 in a couple of days. Yeah, it was terrifying. Because at this point, I didn't have an organization, so this money was going to go through my personal bank account. And my bank account had never had that much money.
In just a couple of weeks as well, like?
No, a couple days. A couple days.
Wow.
Yeah. I was terrified and I closed it because I thought, like, I don't know, the government was going to get angry with me or something. Like, I've seen so much money in my life. So me and Fatin, we raised all this money. We evacuated, I can't remember how many people, but like a couple dozen people with this money. And I had gone back to Egypt again at this point to try to help more people. And I realized that like the initial group of people that I went with, they were maybe a little bit disorganized for my taste because I realized things had gotten pretty serious and we were doing some serious work. So I was like, okay, if I'm doing this, I want to do it my way. I want to do it legit. I want to do it in a way where I can be audited so I can prove that all the money is going to the places it was going to. So what I did was I came back to the US again. I think this was in May or so of 2024, and I decided to found an organization. I had met someone the first time I ever went to Egypt in January. His name was Mahmoud, and we had started working together pretty closely. And I remember my last night, I think May of 2024, we were out drinking coffee at like 2 a.m. And I sat with him and I was like, do you want to found the organization with me? And he goes, yeah, I do. And we've been working night and day on it ever since. And that is how it all got started.
Amazing. I love how this all came from a place of pain and helplessness. And yeah, as you said, the difference between someone who does something and someone who doesn't is just doing it.
Doing it.
Do it. And you did it from the place you were in. For example, you were a content creator. You were like, okay, I'm going to use that platform to do it. Like you didn't necessarily go try to do something completely different. You try to do something you can already do. And yeah, the fact that you went to Egypt as well, how was that? Like, how did you just like, okay, I'm going to go to Egypt tomorrow. I'm going to go to the border. Like, it's actually pretty very far from New York, obviously. Because if you didn't go to Egypt, perhaps this is the turning point. You're going to Egypt.
Oh yeah. If I didn't go to Egypt, then it wouldn't have happened because I want to give credit to Mahmoud as well. This would not have been possible without him. 100%. So there are many strengths that I have that made the organization happen, but I also have weaknesses that just so happen to be his exact strength.
That's amazing. You guys are the amazing team.
Yeah, dude, we were like, it was a match made in heaven, honestly, for this organization because, yeah, so I want to give him a lot of credit as well. So I was very nervous. However, I'm usually a very level-headed scientific person, okay? But I have this insane ability to vibe check decisions and people. And this ability has only I've only made one mistake in my entire life. Okay. So that's how accurate it is. And I just had the vibe that this was the right move to make. And I decided to just go for it. The vibe told me to do it and then I did it. But what helped was, and I'll tell you a little side tangent, cool story.
We love that.
Yeah. I had never been to Egypt before.
Okay.
And it's, quite different from New York City in many ways. Also, my Arabic was fine, but not amazing. So I was a little bit nervous. However, let's rewind back over 20 years. Once upon a time, my mom woke up with a dream. She dreamt that there was a family who needed a place to stay. And she woke up and it was just like such a strong dream that she started asking around in her community, like, is there a family that needs a place to stay? I had this really weird dream. And then someone said, oh my God, yes, actually, there was this guy, he came from Egypt, and the place he was supposed to stay thought it was only him, so they only had room for one man, but he actually brought his wife and two kids, and it was like a miscommunication. And they can't stay in the place that he was going to stay. Could you host them for about a week? And my mom was like, I guess it's meant to be if I dreamt about it. So this family just like showed up to our house and they stayed with us for a week. And I was very young at the time. I can't remember. Maybe I was like 9 years old or something. And our parents acted like friends. So I had no idea that this was the first time that they had met. I thought these were old friends or something. And so they stayed in our house for a week. Now, flash forward when I decided I wanted to go to Egypt. My mom was a little bit nervous about me going to a new country all by myself. So she calls this family and she was like, hey, my daughter is coming to Egypt. Can she stay with you for a week?
It's a full circle moment.
It's a full circle. And then the father of the family was just like, no, my daughter is coming to stay. Like, we already have a bed for her. Let's like, she's of course welcome. And it literally like 20 years later, they repaid the favor for my mom. So that's one of the reasons. Yeah, isn't it crazy? That was one of the reasons why I was less nervous, because there was like a family for me to stay with, and they could, if I was confused about something or needed help with something, they could answer my questions or tell me where to go or what to do in any sort of situation.
Yeah, because otherwise I think like, yeah, it would have been quite scary, especially at the time. Like it was a stressful, yeah. So that's amazing. I love, this is the importance of community. We'll come back to you. Okay, so you told us a bit about the background story, and then how did you actually found it? Like, what was the process? Can you talk us through like the timings, the logistics of it, the legal aspect, the financial?
Yeah, sure.
How does one just create an NGO?
So many people decide to hire a lawyer to do it for them. However, this costs quite a bit of money, like several $1,000s. And I had heard of people doing it themselves. And one thing about me is I'm quite confident in my ability to do something if other people have done it. Because if enough people have done it before, my automatic thinking is like, if they could do it, I can do it. Now, this doesn't apply to like insane things like, you know, being in the Olympics, because the amount of people that could do that is quite small. But if literally thousands of other people have done it, my thought process is, why not me too? Like, okay. So I just started doing a ton of research and also like calling people that I know have done, like founded organizations before, and asked them like, how did you do it? Like, what's your advice? And after doing like a little research period of about a week, asking questions, a ton of Googling, I figured it out basically. So you start, at least this is what applies in the US. So you start by forming a corporation, like a regular company. And you could form an organization quite easily through like certain websites. And it costs a couple $100s. I can't remember how much now, but it couldn't have been more than like $200 to $300 to form a corporation. Once that happens, you then apply for it to be a nonprofit. So that's like a whole other set of applications and stuff that I did through another website. And you can also choose which state you want your organization to be in, depending on which laws are more favorable for your goals. So in the United States, the state with the best laws towards nonprofits is Delaware. And so I founded my organization in Delaware, and then I applied for nonprofit status. And now this application typically takes several months. The thing is though, if you achieve your nonprofit status, it applies retroactively. So I applied and then I started working, hoping that I would get it, because once you achieve the nonprofit status, it applies like, you know, on all the work that you did previously, like since the founding of your organization. So I applied and started working. And then I was a little bit nervous because I guess there was a chance that I didn't do it right and we wouldn't have gotten approved. But worst case scenario in that case, we would have just had to pay taxes on the money that we'd raised so far. So like not the end of the world, but pretty inconvenient, right? So I remember I was in Egypt. I want to say this was like June or July of 2024. Like we'd been running the organization for a few months now, and I was at Mahmoud's house. We were working, and I got an email, and it was the acceptance of our 501c3 status, which is our tax-free status. And we were like jumping up and down and like super pumped. We were so excited. And that again, like applied retroactively. So at that point we were officially a nonprofit. And yearly now, we have to file something called a 990. So we don't have to pay taxes in a typical sense. However, there's one large tax form that we have to file every year as a nonprofit. And it's a very difficult tax form. The first time I ever filled it out, it took me 28 hours. Yeah, I just filled it out for the second time because it's our second year in operation. It took me less this time, thankfully, but it's super detailed. You have to basically tell the government where all of your money came from, have you spent every dollar, who you hired, who's on your board, what is your like bylaws for your organization. And they just basically just make sure you're being good stewards of the money that's being donated to you, you know? And that's the gist of it. There's some smaller things like you need a very good bylaws for your organization. You need a really robust list of policies and procedures. But the founding part of it is basically like making the organization, applying for 501c3 status, and then keeping that 501c3 status through yearly 990 report.
Okay. And so basically being registered in one country means you can operate in another country because you are an organization. Like how do you happen to operate in Egypt, I guess?
Okay, so every country is different. So I'm registered in the US, but if I want to operate in another country, their laws are very different. So some countries it's quite easy. You just hop in there, you fill out some forms, you say, hello, I would love to run some projects in your country. Is that okay? They say sure. Or they require you to like register a branch of your organization in that country. And so you register a branch there. You can open up a bank account and like operate there as usual. Right? Egypt is actually one of the most complex countries to run a foreign. Yes. I feel like now that I've done this one, I've heard Jordan is equally as hard, but I feel like now that I've operated here, I can operate anywhere. Yeah. So the way it works here is you have to operate in partnership with either a local contractor or a local NGO. So for our larger projects, we have to write an MOU with our partner organization. So like an Egyptian NGO. And an MOU is basically like, it's called a memorandum of understanding. It's basically like a deal between the two of us describing the work that we're going to do together. And then we have to send this MOU to the Egyptian government for them to approve of our partnership.
Okay.
And these, they're only valid for a couple of years at a time. So if I want to work with an organization for about 3 years, I file this paper. And then when the partnership is about to expire, we still like each other, we want to keep working together, we file again, right? And this filing they say it takes about 3 months to get approved, but our first one took about 5 months to get approved. And so this is how we do our larger projects. If you go onto our website, you could see our partners. Our biggest project right now is with Masr al-Khair, which is a very large Egyptian NGO. And this is how we do our larger projects. Our smaller projects are done through kind of like service providers or like local contractors. So we're putting on like a small art therapy summer camp. It's only about 5 days. It doesn't require all of this giant paperwork. So what we do is that we hire a local art therapist or a local company to put on these projects for us. And we do it in partnership with them. So it's not like we say, hey, like here's the money, do an art therapy. No, we do the entire curriculum together. We run it with our staff and their staff. And this is how we legally operate in Egypt when it's very difficult to do so. Technically, you can register in Egypt as a foreign NGO, but it is nearly / impossible to do so. So all larger organizations, actually all organizations decide to go the partnership route, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. And I guess like now we kind of like talked to us about the behind the scenes. It'll be great to like understand what Denizens do day to day. So I guess my first question is, how did you move from a volunteering based approach to like a more of like a program based approach? So because it was in the middle of the war, I guess like it sounds like it was more a bit ad hoc, like if someone needs help, you guys would go help, like evacuate and so on, whereas now you kind of like went past that and you're doing more like a program to support those who have evacuated. So can you talk to us a bit more about like the key achievements of Denizens so far and how it is structured through its programs?
Yeah, so when I first started working here, not even through the organization, like when I just came as a person, I was overwhelmed with requests for support and help, and I was helping as well as I could, right? Mm-hmm. And then even when we first founded the organization, we were operating kind of the same way. And then a few months in, we started working with Ahmed, and he had previous experience in NGO work, and a few other people that had previous experience in NGO work. And we had a need to get way more organized, and with their prior experience, we were able to do so. And so now we operate on a project basis. So we have a set project. we have goals, we have things that we offer, we have a budget, we have target beneficiaries, and then we make sure that we have the funding for the project, we run the project, we wrap it up, and we do another one. Or we do the same one again. If it's one that's really good for the community still really needs it, then we can implement the same project again. I mean, it's not that we want to like wrap it up and throw it away, you know? And this is just way more organized. It removes any sort of like, for example, like favoritism, you know, instead of just being like, oh, I only help my cousins and the people that I know and da-da-da. No, like we have a certain list of specifics for the beneficiaries for this project. For example, we have secondhand laptops for children so they can access online school. So we're not just like handing laptops out to people that we know. No, we have a list of criteria for the beneficiaries. So you need to be a Gazan family that evacuated in the past 2 years with more than 3 children in online classes. If you fit into these criteria, then you qualify for one of these laptops.
Okay.
It just makes things way more organized. It also makes sure that we never run out of money. You know, we never promise something and then turns out, oh my gosh, it's not in the budget. No, we know exactly how many people can benefit from this program. We know exactly how much things cost. We know exactly who we need to hire to make this happen. And it's way more professional, and it makes sure that, you know, we minimize mistakes, because mistakes in this field can be quite devastating to people. Like imagine someone told you, hey, like we can cover your rent for the next few months. And then they say, oh, I'm sorry, we ran out of money. Like I would never want to put somebody in that position. And I've actually seen some less organized organizations do this to people, like promise to pay their rent for, I don't know, 6 months or so, and then like cancel after 2 because they ran out of money. And that's something that I would never want to put somebody through emotionally. Yeah. So that's why we operate and set projects. Now, the projects that we currently work on / have like recently wrapped up are one like very large relief-based project. So this is the project with Nasr al-Khair. It's about a year-long project, and it offers rent relief, food vouchers, psychological support services, hygiene kits, fun days for the kids to play and for the families to find community. And basically like group empowerment sessions, so like group therapy sessions. We also have about 7 therapists on board for this project, and all of them are receiving a PTSD training before the project even like kicks off. So that's one of our main projects. Another one that we have is our artisan support program. So we have, it's called Threads of Resilience, because there's a very disproportionate amount of single mothers here, and mothers
like they created alone.
Yes, they either evacuated alone or their husband passed away. They can't contact their husband anymore. Or unfortunately, their husband got sick of being apart, got another wife, and doesn't talk to them anymore. Yeah, so there's a lot of women here with children and trying to take care of the children alone for the first time. And they don't qualify for regular jobs because they don't have residency status here. They also can't leave their kids alone because their kids also don't qualify to go to school, so their kids are at home. So what we do is we support them in making handmade embroidery pieces, tatriz pieces, and we purchase these pieces from them and we bring them abroad to either the UK or the US, and we sell them on their behalf as a way to support them economically. That's another project that we had. This last year, we just wrapped up a dental support program. So we helped about 100 Palestinians with pretty severe dental issues through some partnerships that we had here in Cairo. We partnered with 3 dental clinics to provide free root canals, extractions, fillings, a couple implants, things like this. What's another project? Educational support. So because a lot of children are trying to learn online, but many of them don't have access to devices to learn online, we bring in secondhand laptops and we distribute them to these children so they can access their online classes. I think those are our main projects at the moment, and the art therapy project that we're kicking off next month.
I guess like you kind of like mentioned some of the barriers the refugees in Egypt are facing. So you said they don't have access, they can't work, and they can't go to school. Is that because of their, what's the reason for that? Is it because they don't have like a refugee status?
So Palestinian refugees in Egypt don't have refugee status or residency status. So you need one of these to apply for like, you know, work eligibility, for example, or to register your child in school. So without these, there's quite a few barriers to life here. Yeah.
And how many, I guess, like Palestinian refugees are there in Egypt?
There's no clear number. But the last estimate / average of people that evacuated over the past few years is around 200,000.
Wow, okay. And how many people is Denizens like overseeing?
So in our beneficiary list, like people that benefit or we would love to insert into some of our programs. We have about 800 families registered with us. And
Amazing.
so, yeah, and each family is anywhere from, 4 to 12 people.
Wow, okay. When you say 800 family, I'm like, like average for family members.
No, Palestinians love to make babies, right? And honestly, like if someone also they evacuated with their like elderly father and mother, we count that as like one family. So if me and my husband, our 4 kids, my mom and dad and his dad, like we would make that one family, like in our registration, right? So that's how I would register a family. However, we are at the end of the day quite a small organization, and we have been able to work with, I think about in the past like year and a half here, we've worked with about 1,600 of these people. But with our upcoming programs, I don't even know. I think
the art therapy one?
Like our relief one, like the art therapy one, like the laptops project that we're expanding quite rapidly actually. I do imagine that this number would double just this year actually. So
amazing.
Yeah.
And I think like one question that comes to mind is also, how do you fund these programs? Is it because I guess you did some seed, would you call that seed funding through like TikTok and so on? Like you raised quite a large amount and then
so the money that I raised through TikTok, it all went. It was all for evacuations and stuff.
So that was evacuations for.
Yeah, so when I founded the organization, like we didn't have any money. Like the money that I used, for example, to register the organization was like my own personal money. Like I think it cost me, not an insane amount, I think about like $800 total to start the organization. That was all my personal money.
Then how did you, like, I guess, how did you fund the evacuations, and then how do you fund the programs?
So the evacuations was before I founded Denizens.
Okay.
The evacuations was something I did like on a personal level, and that one I did through, again, social media, so like TikToks and with my friend Fatin as well. She had like a TikTok go pretty viral, and that helped a lot. But after I founded the organization, up until this point, all of our funding has been public funding. So some online fundraisers, some in-person fundraisers, particularly in the UK, some donors that maybe like more wealthier donors, so like a donor that can donate about like $10,000, which is much more than like an average donation, But we haven't received any sort of grants or government funding at all. We're working towards hopefully receiving some grants in the future, because as the news cycle passes, it's been quite difficult to raise money publicly for Palestinian causes. So we're trying to find ways to get money the more traditional route, which is like grant writing. However, there is a wonderful flexibility that comes with public funding that grants don't have. So when you apply for a grant, the person or the entity giving you this grant has quite strict control over how you can use the money. So they might be like, okay, I'm giving you $20,000, but you have to use it for XYZ. So if the opportunity comes up in the future for a program that would be really beneficial for the community, you can't use that money for it, right? But when public funding comes in, the public is trusting you to best use this money, and so you can then do this work. So for example, with the dental project, we didn't know that there was such a big need for dental care here.
The first thing that comes to mind when you think of
so we had no idea until we were tasked by the UNDP to do a study here with displaced Palestinians. So we ran a few surveys and focus groups to get some information, and one topic that we saw popping up again and again and again was the need for dental care. We realized that almost every family had at least one person with very severe dental decay, and this really affects your day-to-day life. Like imagine you have 2 or 3 teeth that are in intense pain constantly, right? Like we worked with children that are on daily pain medications just to deal with their teeth, right? We worked with a guy who had an infection so bad in his mouth that it was, I don't want to be too gross, but it was oozing out his cheek, like the outside of his face was oozing from the decay inside his mouth. So when you're in this position, like, how are you supposed to work and support your family? How are you supposed to like live your life? It truly affects not only your life, but especially when you're a caretaker, like the life of your entire family. So when we realized this, we were like this is a real need in the community right now. So we sat together and we made a dental program where we covered all these needs for people. And that was because we had public funding. We could just decide, we saw the need and we decided to do this. So we put aside, I think the project ran for a couple months. It was about a $15,000 project, and we helped 100 people with their dental care. And that project was so successful and was so impactful that we would love to do it again next year, or maybe this end of this year. However, we're still trying to get funds for it.
Amazing. I think like when you were talking about this shows that like conflict is not only like driven by bombs. Like when you let people like they did not have the facilities they needed for so many months that their health was suffering from it. Obviously, like lack of food, lack of hygiene, lack of like all the like needs that a human has on a daily basis does affect their life in the short and then long term. As you said, they wouldn't be able to be in good health enough to, even after they fled, like they're not in a good health enough to be able to support their families. I think we are kind of coming to the end of the conversation here. After talking about your background and the background of founding Denizens and what you guys are currently doing, it'll be great to look outside of this and particularly look at our audience and what they would like to learn today. And it'll be great to see whether you had one piece of advice for people with similar ambitions. Of course, we are a very driven generation, but there's always that difficulty in changing passion and drive to tangible impact. So it was very helpful for you to walk us through like what are the logistics of founding your own organization. So yeah, what would you say is the one advice you'd have for people who are very passionate and who care a lot about what's going on in the world, who are frustrated by the current context or mechanisms similar to you? I guess you're frustrated that like there was no clear way to donate or there was not enough support. So yeah, what's your one piece of advice? Sorry, I'm just repeating myself, for people who have similar passions and would like to make a change in the world or the region.
Okay, I guess I can boil it down to one, but it's like in two parts. So the first one is just do it. I mean,
yeah.
Like if you see a need, you can fill it. You don't have to wait for somebody else to fill it. And you might not have the right experience, but learn or just start or find someone who's done it before and ask them how they did it. You like truly, if everyone just did what they thought needed to be done in the world, the whole world would be a better place. Now, not everyone has the time and energy and financial support to just found an organization and go live in Egypt. Like that's kind of crazy, right? But everyone does have the ability to do what they can in their life and with their experiences. So the second part of this is doing it looks different for every person. So like what's in your capacity is very different from what's in other people's capacity. Some people, they support by donating their money. Some people, for them, donating literally $25,000 is nothing. Like they just have the resources to support organizations like us, and they could donate sizable amounts of money. That's great. Some people can't donate any money at all. However, they might have bookkeeping experience. They might reach out and be like, hey, do you need help with your bookkeeping? I can donate a couple hours a week to help you with your bookkeeping. Some people have connections. Then be like, hey, I know somebody doing something very similar to you. Maybe you guys might benefit from being connected to each other. That makes a big difference. Some people, they have a few free weekends a year and they can organize a bake sale, right? And they can organize a little fundraiser to fundraise for organizations that they trust and they want to support. And so it literally does not matter who you are. Literally sharing something on Instagram makes a difference. Yeah. Like donating money makes a difference. Showing up to an event, even if you don't have that much money to donate, buying the $5 ticket, showing up, just being a body there and showing the organizers that like they're not doing this alone, dude, makes a huge difference. One of the issues that we have when you're like working at this sort of stuff day to day is like morale. Like you get tired, you get overwhelmed. And like when you host an event, when you host an event and like a whole bunch of people show up, even if they don't donate that much money, just seeing people behind you pushes you to keep going. So it really doesn't matter in what capacity you can do it. As long as you're honest with yourself and you're supporting what you believe in to the best of your ability, that makes a difference.
Amazing. I think, yeah, just because also from your story, if you hadn't done those individual things when you thought they needed to be done, perhaps Denizens wouldn't have happened today. Like if you
it definitely wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. So each action is important because I think the issue is that a lot of people keep thinking about it. They overthink it a lot. They're like, I can't open my NGO until I get this degree, until I get this experience, until I reach this amount of financial stability. And with that, time passes and that need is not being filled. That need for action is not being filled, and that deteriorates, I guess, like the whole issue. But yeah, I guess I like the action first mindset, and we should all be more action driven.
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rebecca. We're so literally honored that you took the time to be here with us, share your amazing story, and share the background of Denizens and all the really valuable advice. I think our audience will really enjoy having like someone who's done it themselves give their perspective on how to do it and how to do it well, I guess. So we'll also share, I guess, Denizens' social media and website. Is there like one way people can support Denizens that you'd like to share today? Is it like through following? I guess like looking into your programs, donations.
Like more immediate things, just following us on Instagram. We don't post very often, but when we do, we really appreciate the support, the shares, also donating if you can on our website. And if you can, hosting smaller fundraisers in your community. Like, feel free to reach out. I don't know how you can link my email, but you can link my email. Yeah, it's Rebecca@denizensociety.com. Or you can also just fill out the form on our website to contact me. And if you want to host a small fundraiser in your community, like that means so much because it not only raises maybe a couple $100, a couple £100, but it also brings our name out there and more people get to know about the work that we're doing.
So if you want to take action, this is maybe a way to do it by collaborating with Denizens. Thank you so much, Rebecca, and best of luck on the rest of your programs.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.